You're the one that told that girl, no, I told you to take that job, and then the voice recording literally says, okay.
Janet Jack me.
Just a note to say hello to everybody. This is Roman. I'm in the preservation office. We'll get started in a little bit. Thank you for joining.
Oh, no, how can I help you?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Lowenthal. I'm a staff person with the Houston Planning and Development Department. We'll be starting momentarily. We're going to give a couple more minutes for allow for more people to join. Thank you for attending. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Jason Lowenthal. We're going to give it about one more minute to allow for more folks to join this meeting. Again, thank you for attending. If you would please make sure that you are muted. Thank you.
This is Roman. I just want to ask, is anyone able to see a screen that says join now? Is that, yeah, okay, great, thanks.
Hello. I'm in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to attending this evening's public meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information on becoming a historic district. We will be covering topics as application, approval process, the advantages and disadvantages, as well as some historical context information. If you would please stay muted, we will have questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to type it into the chat room. Staff will address your question once we get to the Q&A session. On Teams, we also have a raise your hand feature that we'll use there. And then also to let you know that this meeting is being recorded. And with that, I will turn this over now to the Historic Preservation Officer, Roman McAllen.
Hi, everybody. Hey, can everyone hear me? People hear me? Okay, people can hear me. First, thank you for joining us, and I apologize. I wish we could be meeting in a forum in the neighborhood in person. Y'all know why we're not, so we're doing this meeting here. And I've got the slides up that I'm sharing, and are they being shared now? People can see them? Great. Okay, so there's the one about how to mute. If you're joined us by phone, you press *6 to do that. Here's an agenda for today, what we're here to talk about. These are the topics. I'm going to spend a minute or two with some introductions and a little bit of background on historic preservation, and then information about how they're made in Houston, and a little information about this particular proposed district, and talk about some advantages and disadvantages, and then take questions, the most important part, or really that should just say discussion. We're amongst friends, and this meeting will go as long as it needs to. First, you already heard from Jason Lilienthal. I'm proud of the people that work here. Jason, he has a master's in historic preservation from the University of Texas at San Antonio. We also have Terrence Jackson on here. Actually, his camera is facing his desk right now, so you don't see Terrence there. But Terrence has a professional architecture degree from Prairie View A&M. And then there's myself, and I'm a native of Houston. And I want to just give you the background. I grew up in Windsor Village. Some of y'all may know it. It's down in Southwest Houston. It's where Windsor Village United Methodist Church is, in that area. And I went to the University of Houston downtown, U of H Law School for just a little while. And then much later in life, I got into the University of Texas School of Architecture, where I got a professional architecture degree. But my interest in historic preservation began here in the neighborhood, not far away. Those of you who are old enough will remember the Turn Vereen building at 5202 Alameda. I remember in 1993, when this building was demolished, I had just decided to leave law school. And that really began my interest in it. Y'all know now that's where the Walgreens is, there at Southmore. Another thing, I want to make sure you know that we're not coming from some foreign place. This is my childhood best friend's house at Prospect and Sawyer. So I'm familiar with driving. I drove him to high school. We used to go to Lamar High School, and I would pick him up and take him down there. So just to say that, we have this team of professional people who care deeply about what we do. And let me state too that this is the beginning of the process. Some people have expressed to our office that they didn't know that there was a proposed district. Well, this meeting right here is the knowing, and the effort we made to just get letters out and make sure people know about this meeting. This is to say, hey, someone's asked for a historic district. And so this is the beginning. we can have this meeting. If we don't cover all the things that we need to talk about here, we can have other meetings. There's nothing set. There's no decision been made. Okay, so a little bit of just about historic preservation. I want to mention how it begins. Why do we have a law that makes historic districts anyway? Very couple slides here. The National Historic Preservation Act, actually, I see a lot of people joining the meeting. I want to say thank you to everybody who's joining. And I have failed to say the most important thing. We do have Councilwoman Caroline Evans Shabazz is here. And I know we have other people here. Council member, would you like to say hello? If you're here, or anyone on her staff?
No, I was trying, I'm here. Thank you so very much for this meeting. I did get, a few phone calls regarding it. And so I'm very interested to find out, first of all, how this application came about, and then the pros and cons of this proposed application. So I do appreciate you bringing this meeting forward, and also appreciate that the questions will be answered in this presentation. And so if I need to ask any questions at this point, I will raise my hand or whatever is needed. So thank you so very much. And I'm quite familiar with that house on Prospect and Sawyer. I actually live right around the corner. So
My friend
anyway,
was
when I looked at it, I was like, I think I know that house. And so anyway, thank you so much for this presentation. Thank you and the entire team.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I know we probably have other people that really need some recognition. We have I believe the Civic Club president is on. Joyce, if you're here. We probably have the super neighborhood person on, and I know you're all welcome. You're all important, and I work for you, as do the two people that are here with us. So we're here at your service. So coming back to what I was just want to explain a little bit, how do we get preservation laws in a couple slides? The National Historic Preservation Act was written in 1966, a little over 50 years ago, and the breaking point was the demolition of New York's Penn Station when Madison Square Garden was built. It just was kind of a tipping point across the country. People were upset about demolition of a lot of buildings. And when the Preservation Act was passed, it also included something called Section 106, which I'll explain in a second. And it created the National Register for Historic Places, and it created state historic preservation officers in all 50 states. There you go. And the first test of the Section 106 was the French Quarter in New Orleans. Y'all might not know this, but there was a freeway planned, and this is a rendering of a elevated freeway going over and through the French Quarter. This was going to happen, and it was the first test of the Preservation Act, and the citizens won. And this was an article just from a newspaper. 50 years later, they looked back on how they stopped it. And there's a lot of text on this next slide. Let's see if it'll come up for me. There it is. But the key to the text is I just want to point out that plan, that highway plan, was developed by Robert Moses, who was responsible for a lot of urban renewal and a lot of clearing of land and things like that. The freeway project had the support of city council, local businesses, a lot of people. And if you notice this one line, they sold it by saying, we need this freeway so we can draw more visitors to New Orleans downtown than Houston or Dallas or Atlanta. Well, there was a big uproar. People got involved, and eventually in '69, the Secretary of Transportation withdrew the plan and said it impaired the historic quality of the New Orleans French Quarter. And that decision represented a 20-year fight by local preservationists who took on, as it says here, city's political, business, media leaders, and won it. And I say that, and there's there's parts of the famous French Quarter. We know that Houston didn't take advantage of Section 106, our neighborhood in Riverside, because people would have, if we had protested, they would not have eliminated, hundreds and hundreds of homes to cut 288 through the neighborhood. We just didn't have that. So that's today in Houston, we have preservation laws. They kind of started in the 1980s, and we have 22 historic districts and over 400 historic landmarks. And that's where our program is. So provide information on how historic districts are created. It's really straightforward. This little slide is narrows it down into 8 steps. Number 1 is that there's some kind of initiation of an application by 10% of the property owners in the proposed area. That happened here. The map, actually, it's the one thing I didn't put in this PowerPoint is the map. So Jason, if you don't mind, when you have time, have it ready on your screen, the proposed map at some time, just a clean version. The director of planning reviews the application for completeness. Once it's complete, then there's a mail out to number 3, the owners in the neighborhood of this particular beginning meeting, this public meeting. And there can be many public meetings. The meeting has, number 4 says the meeting has to happen within 30 days of the application. But within 30 days, that's why we're meeting. Number 5, after we've had enough public meetings, after everybody involved here has had time to talk and have their questions answered, then we mail a response form to each of the owners in the proposed district, and they just check, I'm for it or I'm against it. If 67% of people are for it, then that's considered complete. Those are the boundaries of it. And we take that to the historical commission, which would approve it, and they would recommend to city council approval. The map of the district can change shape based on maybe 5 people here want to be in it, but nobody over here wants to be in it generally. The area though just needs to be contiguous. It can't have holes in it. We can't have part of Rosedale covered and then skip a block or even skip a few houses and then pick it up again. It's got to be one spot. So that's how they're created in a nutshell. That's that part of it. If you have questions, just hold and write them down, jot them down, and we'll get to them. The information about this particular district, here's a slide no one's going to look at for a minute, but Preservation Houston wrote this statement about the significance of Riverside Terrace. I know I don't need to tell y'all how special the neighborhood is. I don't need to tell you how incredible the architecture is. It just is, and this is a history of who developed it, the important architects involved, etc. But I chose a couple of images that they provided to us. So here's just an ad, 2 ads. One on the left explaining the neighborhood. You'll find located among beautiful trees and winding drives, several excellent brick veneer homes. Where they are in the best of surroundings and proper restrictions, which I understand none of those exist anymore, but and proper restrictions to protect your home in Riverside Terrace, open for inspection. And actually 2 of these are on Rosedale, 2402 and 2505, and then some other ones there. The other ad is more like a news article, is saying that this particular designer builder, J.P. Ellis, had 2 permits issued, one for 2415 Rosedale and one for 2925 Ella Lee Lane in River Oaks. So that builder was pulling those permits at the same time. That caused me to just get a little curious and see, well, how are those houses there? And if you live in the house on the left and but y'all know this neighborhood, these are those 2 houses. So I was surprised the house in River Oaks is still there. There it is, and actually the brick, if you look at the lintel or the windowsill from the outside of the house, you see it's the same design on both. If you just kind of look at that, you realize these are very similar homes. So we know, y'all know, I don't need to tell you. My mother lives, by the way, across the freeway. I failed to state that, right across from McGregor Way. She's lived there since 1977. So I grew up kind of playing in that empty area when the homes were all developed. The other reason I know the area too is she's good friends with a guy named John Schwartz, who made the movie This Is My Home or Our Home and It's Not for Sale. So I've kept up with him over the years, and I remember when the movie came out, and I've watched it countless times. So we all know, and you all know, it just doesn't need to be explained. Though, but here's another map. Here's a map, a plat map from 1924. Now this covers right in our area. You see Rosedale going horizontally right about in the middle of the screen. And to the right of the screen, you see Live Oak. And then you see Dowling, which Dowling became Emancipation Avenue, I believe, right? I think that's right. Someone said, yeah. And then Hutchins is gone. All those other homes were demolished. So that's the neighborhood. I don't want to not play it up, but I truly believe y'all know how important it is. Let's talk about the most important question. Why would we do this? Why would we make a historic district? Well, and if you're, I don't know if the owner of this home is on. I don't mean to point out, but y'all know this home. I think, is it still boarded up in this fashion? Is this home still boarded up?
No, that house is.
No, it's not boarded up anymore.
Okay. Is it occupied?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good, wonderful, wonderful. Well, then this question, is not actually a good image to use, but it kind of is. The point of preservation, a historic district, why you would have a historic district, which is Houston, Texas's strongest preservation tool. The two strongest, it's kind of tied with protected landmark. An individual can put a protected landmark on their property. If they do so, unless it's pretty much saying that home, that structure will be there forever. God forbid a storm or something, but you're not going to get a permit to demolish a protected landmark unless it's been severely damaged in some way and it can't be saved. And in historic districts, if you have a contributing house in the district, which simply means the structure is of the time of the original district, the period that the district matters in, then same thing. It shouldn't be demolished. Not likely. It can be altered, but it can't be demolished. So that's preservation. Historic district means saving the character, saving the streetscape, saving the buildings. Now, I was surprised to find out, and y'all all know this, you already have minimum lot size ordinances and minimum building line ordinances in the neighborhood. And this is a map of them. I'm fairly certain y'all know, on my right here, you see two purple boxes at an angle on Rosedale. And those purple boxes established a minimum lot size and land use. Existing, and what that means is existing multifamily and commercial are grandfathered, but everything else has to stay residential. Now that is set, I checked with staff down the hall, and that would expire in 2040 if it's not renewed. The light green areas that you see on Wichita and that Arbor or whatever Arbor is, in light green, those were created earlier, so therefore the land use can change in any structure there because those were created a little earlier. Now, you have the minimum building line ordinances, which really apply to practically everybody here in this proposed district. And these would expire, I believe it's in 2026. And if you made new ones, they would be good for 40 years. So you have a very strong protection tool, as you know, in that. Those minimum lot size and minimum building line are strong tools. Let me just keep going with this. You've got that, and I'm trying to lay these out, and I apologize, it's going to bounce a little bit here, to tax exemption. So a benefit of historic preservation. If you have a protected landmark or contributing building in a historic district, there is a little benefit in this tax exemption program the city has. I took a little time to draft a sample here, and let's walk through it a little. You notice that I say land value 200,000. each of you on your tax bill, you've got your land value and your improvement value. We looked at one or two, and we just made up these numbers. So there's no, if your land is valued at 200,000 and your house is valued at 100,000, and you spent $25,000 on your house, you will have spent the 25% minimum needed in order to qualify for the City of Houston's Historic Preservation Tax Exemption. And I do see a hand up, ma'am, Miss Lauren. Can you let me get through this and pop it back up in a minute? I hope that's okay. Then what does that mean in dollars and cents? Down in the more at the bottom, you see a couple of equations. It says $200,000 plus $100,000 gives you 300. Actually, that should be $300,000. I can't believe I got a typo in there. Let me think. Why isn't that working right? Let me look at this one. Let me look at this one. Let me look at that one. That's the 0, and that's that one. Yeah, I'm not sure what. I just forgot to do a calculation there. Let me do it real quick. No, I won't. I'm gonna jump to the next one and come back to that, because this one I know is accurate. So this in this same example, an individual didn't spend $25,000. They spent $100,000. They spent the same amount as the value of their structure. Down at the bottom, that would possibly provide them a savings on their taxes of $635 per year. And these exemptions are good for 15 years. So over the next 15 years, the person could save $9,538. So I put that in that as an example. The one that this one previous to it that's slightly off, what it would mean is a little less savings, only $2,000 over 15 years if you spent the minimum. These are not big savings. It's surprising in today's day and age, but we all know how much everything is costing. So this is not, even if you spent that $100,000, $9,500 over 15 years, shockingly is not an enormous amount, but it's something. So I wanted to let you know that that exists. And people use this frequently. They're actually used a lot in River Oaks, where the structures might be valued at a lot higher number, like $1 million, and then they're making $1 million improvement. So they might end up, their 15-year valuation might be from $65 to $75 to $85 to $95,000 savings over 15 years. That's the tax exemption program. I want to comment here that the city has, under our office, received a grant for a new financial incentive plan for historic properties. It's specifically being drafted for Freedmanstown, but we intend for it to be used across the city once we get it passed, and we hope some benefits come from that. But I can't tell you that there's any yet, so let me leave that out. I want to mention this new law right now. In September, a law was passed that says this. It says county appraisers can take the fact that your home is in a historic district in determining its valuation for tax purposes. So I'll give my own home as an example. I live in the West End in an old bungalow off of Washington, and the county says that my structure is worth $5,000, but my land is worth $350,000, and my taxes are $9,000 a year, all approximately. I don't know how this law will play out over the years, but I suspect if I were in a historic district, I could go to the county and say, you have valued my property too high. You're valuing it as if it's a clear lot and someone could build a new home or 2 townhomes on that lot. But it can't, because my home can't go anywhere. And I do believe this tool, which was introduced by a conservative politician in Dallas, a state representative or state senator in Dallas, introduced that bill, and it did pass. I just want to mention that here. Let's get back to whether they benefits and disadvantages. What gets regulated? If you have a historic district, exterior changes visible from the street. Exterior changes visible from the street are regulated. And that would include an addition you can see from the street, or replacement of your doors or windows or siding, or changing the roof slope or pitch. New construction also is regulated, and there's like 4 criteria for approval. But if you have an empty lot, that's either empty because it's empty, or it's empty because there was a storm, or for whatever reason, in someone's building, that new construction, the design of that house has to fit in with the neighborhood, simply put. And historic districts are really conservative, right? It means that it's got to kind of fit. Most of the homes are brick, of the historic homes you all have, so they would need to be a brick home, right? You look at the styles, and so what it doesn't mean it can't be of its time and fit in. It can't be contemporary. It just has to fit in. Demolition and relocation. So if a home is going to be demolished or relocated, that's regulated. And administrative approval and HHC. Any of those 3 things, if you're changing those 3 things, it will either be approved administratively by this office or by the commission. And every month we have a commission meeting and we ask for reviews. And there are 11 criteria for approval. But the gist of how it works is we don't want to lose the historical architectural integrity of your home in the preservation world. I want to point out, this is kind of a funny slide, but this is a house in Old 6th Ward, historic district, and paint isn't ever regulated. Paint color's not regulated. No one tells you can paint a painted house any color you want. This is a current house in Old 6th Ward.
Roman,
Yes.
just make that point that you can paint any color on a wood exterior.
Right. Next, I was going to get the next slide. There's an exception. However, as this slide points out, unpainted brick buildings usually are not painted, and you need a permit. So most of the homes y'all have are original brick homes, and they're not painted. It's a recognized basic thing in preservation that you should not be painting a historically masonry building that has never been painted. That's just the thing we have. Now, if it's been painted already, when the district's created, well, it can be painted over and over. I can't believe I did that. That's 30 minutes, it looks like on my clock, or 25. I'm going to stop. I think from here we talk. Questions. Raise your hand if you want on the thing, or just speak out if no one's speaking.
Roman, for the purpose of the presentation, I am putting up the proposed map boundary for Riverside Terrace.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do see a hand, Tiffany Brown. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, I guess my question would be, and we live on Rosedale Street, which is part of the proposed historic district, would be if we wanted to re-brick our home and still maintain that it's brick, but maybe we wanted to put an addition on, and so we wanted the whole structure to be brick. What would that be allowed, or would we have to get a permit or permission for that?
So you're saying your home is currently brick. You want to take all the brick off, make an addition, and re-brick it?
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of times people need to do that because of foundation issues, or either foundation issues, or if at one time you had a roof problem, that wall could get affected and you have separation of the ties of the brick. The answer is yes, you can do that. We've just in the last year approved 2 structures to do that. We have a structure in Boulevard Oaks. That's the lovely neighborhood across behind the Contemporary Arts Museum on North and South Boulevard. One of those really, really big houses needed to be de-bricked, almost all of it. He left one part. And there was some trepidation, some concern about it. But the fact was that there were some certain conditions that the best way to do what he wanted to do was to take it all off. And that was approved by, actually they have deed restrictions there, and that Civic Club approved it eventually, and our office approved it. And one benefit too is when people have serious problems with a house, this office, the City of Houston's Office of Preservation, we work for you, we serve you, we take our professional skills to you. So if someone calls, we're like, hey, let us come look at it. And we'll go, if someone's telling me I need to do this or that, will you come just take a look at it? Sure, we'll talk about it. So anyway, yes, ma'am, you can do that. You could do that. You can make an addition. Now the addition would need to meet the 11 criteria. So
Right.
that would mean the addition can't not overwhelm the original structure. It can't, for example, bulge out to the side, right straight to the side, real straight, like up around the front of the street. We want the character of the neighborhood as you come down the street, the cadence of are those structures like that. So the additions, if you go into like Houston Heights, we get a lot of additions. They're kind of towards the rear, and they're sort of defined as, and they can be differentiated. They could be brick, but they can be also cement board or hardy plank. I see another hand.
Roman,
We have a question in the chat.
Okay.
So the question is from Lauren. The question is, what was the basis of the boundary included in the application?
Okay, let me take a stab at it and see if I can get it. With this map, we initially had a first application that was a little bit smaller, but the city law says that the director reviews the application for completeness, and in reviewing the application, staff was looking at it, and it was suggested that perhaps the boundary could be a little bigger, and we still had the 10% applicant level, and so then that boundary became this boundary. I will state again emphatically that this boundary can change. You know, I've talked to one owner of the properties on Emancipation that seem to be kind of just standing alone there, and like it's easy, especially easy if it's on the edge of the district. If someone says, "I just don't want to be a part of this," well, okay. We probably can work it, but it does. If 67% of the people here and staff, if somebody would do the math on that, you've got it right there. You could kind of figure it out. That is,
You don't need to do that.
Okay. Anyway, we'll keep going. I'm not sure. Did I answer that question on the map?
That question came from the chat, Roman. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I hope it. Please chat in if that is not sufficient answer, and try to start calling names. Team here. I see a Cynthia Sample.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Can I talk?
Yes. You may. Sure.
I'm Cynthia.
Can you all hear me? Because this is my first time on here, so I wasn't sure. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay, Cynthia. Will you hold a second and let this person out there? They can't see that well on it. Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay. I'm totally against the propositions for the historic district, and it's gonna devalue the property. It's not gonna do any good. You know, 200-300 years from now, there's a lot of things happen. We don't grow land, so you don't want to restrict your land. If River Oak District is not registered as historical district, no one in the city of Houston is qualified for that. And there's a reason why they are not registered under historic district, because you cannot do a lot of things to your land. And when you sell your property, nobody wanna buy it. Okay, nobody wanna buy your property either, because you are devaluing your property big time. And there's so much regulation, what paint you can use, what door you can use, what kind of measurement you can use for your window. And the contractor, no one want to deal with that either, because they have to be on site and very particular for historic district.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm very sorry. We were taking questions at this moment. If you don't mind, can we reserve your comments for the end, because we had people that had their hands up prior, if you don't mind. Thank you.
This is staff member Jason. To remind everybody, this is for informational purposes only. Response forms will be mailed out this week where you can vote yes or no in support of designation. Thank you.
Wait, let me just clarify that. Not this week, but when we complete the process. We don't have to do the question, but we will come back. That was a lot that you said, ma'am, and by the way, I understand you might have just joined the meeting. If you did just join the meeting and missed the rest of it, we have a recording of it. We're happy to share it. I've seen this hand up a lot. Let me click on this person so I get the name. Aliyah Minor, is that right?
Aaliyah.
Aaliyah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Aaliyah, please go ahead.
So I have a question. So I'm on, we're at 2414 on Rosedale, and we're looking to do in the front, well, I guess it's the front, kind of the side where it is, to tear it down and redo it. And we're also looking to put a garage in the back. So if this passes, then we would have to get permission to be able to redo the structure that's in, that I guess before we bought it, you know, that might have been a drive-through to go through, or it was something. But if we decide to tear it down, we're gonna have to tear it down to be able to do what we need to do. So we would have to, and we already have all the information for it. So if we started it prior to this, it wouldn't be an issue. But if we started after, let's say this passes, then we then have to get clearance to be able to do that because it's right in the front by the trees. We have to.
Would you, and I apologize, you've already once said your address publicly, so if you don't mind me asking, would you say it again one time so I can just look at it? Can you say the address again?
2414
Okay.
Rosedale.
Okay, I know you said it already, so I'm just gonna, you can't answer these questions without kind of looking. I want to see what structure you're talking about.
Yeah, type in
Oh, I see it. I
HTTPS
see it.
address. You should be able to get in. I'm in it right now.
I'm sorry. If somebody would meet staff.
Mute your line.
Online HTTPS, blah, 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 blah. The one on the letter.
Terrence, could you catch that mute on where the?
Yes, sir. I took care of it.
Okay, the 2414. I see how your carport was filled in. You're saying you want to tear that out.
Right. So if we decide to tear that, if we decide to tear it down, will it be, if we tear it down prior to this, obviously we'll be fine. But
Right.
if we tear it down to rebuild it afterwards, let's say this passes afterwards, then because it was brick, because you can see it, even though the trees are right there, we would have to get.
Yeah. Would you mean by
permission.
tear it down? Do you mean tear down the whole 2-story element, that part of your house?
No, like that part. So if we decide, like, for us to be able to get it redone to add what we need to add, it won't be a carport, but we have to, basically they want to be able to tear it down to redo it and build it correctly, because they kind of just threw it up there.
Would you mind, with your permission, may I share the front of your house with this screen, with this people watching? I can, if it's up to you. No, we'll talk about it later. But the answer to the question, let me just tell you this, that because I can see an infill there on your home. First, the garage is no problem. We have that you can make garages in historic districts, garage apartments in historic districts. That's not a limit. If the tearing down of the piece of your home is an original structural or architectural detail to the front, it looks like it's kind of a carport with a room above it. If you really needed to tear it down to do whatever you're doing, and it was going to be rebuilt the same, you could possibly get a approval for that. We'd have to look at it a little more closely. It looks to me like what you have is what was formerly a porte cochere that went through, that was later infilled. That absolutely can be taken out. So an alteration that was done to your building that is inappropriate to begin with, an alteration which you see kind of infilled porches, and you see kind of lots of additions that were made that are not original, all of those can always be removed or taken away or changed. So there's a lot of flexibility. And I also need to say, if you even apply for the permit before the district was to be created, that too would grandfather you. So there's some room there. Why don't you maybe let's talk offline if that's something you want to be real clear on, and I can look at your house with you, and we can take, staff here will look at it.
Okay.
We'll tell you yes or no problem. If that helps. Okay. Next thing I see, Stephen James.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. This is Stephen James. I'm with City Council Member Carolyn Evans-Shabazz's office. My question has to do about the petition. I receive a great deal of phone calls from people in the community that they were unaware of this. And as I look at the list of the petition, there's only 3 people who signed on to this. Is that 10% of the community?
That's 10% of the tract owners.
But again, that's 3 people.
Right, but to make it so, let me see. First, a couple things. You mentioned people just found out. I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but
No, I've been here all along, so that wasn't my question.
Okay,
Forgive-
okay.
The
Okay.
question was, like, if I'm understanding this properly, you need 10% of the people in the community. Are you saying that because this one person owns 3 houses, he is considered,
Oh, you have, okay, one person owns multiple tracks? Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So
so the,
there's
yeah.
3 people involved.
right.
Good point.
And so, but I
It's
want to
over
ask the question.
50 houses.
So the answer to your question is it's 10% of the track owners. So if one individual owns multiple properties, those all count towards, so someone said the number 50, and I think the team's going to give you the number, but if it's 50, then we need 5 track owners to apply for a district. And this is only to apply. And here we begin and we ask the people in the area, as we're doing here, and explain the district.
But
And
you only have 3.
well,
Three, we can count, that's 3.
but there are more people. There
I know,
are other
but I
people.
didn't even get brought up if you only started with 3.
Roman, may I jump in for a
Exactly.
moment? May I jump in for a
Sure,
minute?
this is Director Wallace Brown jumping on. Here.
Hi, this is Director Wallace Brown. Perhaps it's a better way to say it exactly as the code says it. So the code allows for a petition to be started by 10%, by owners of 10% of the properties included in the proposed district. So if there are, 50 properties in the proposed district, property owners representing 10 of those, 5 of those properties. Now, those owners may own all 5, or there may be 5 separate owners, but it is the owners of 10% of the properties located within the proposed district. So in this case, if there are 3 names on the petition, then some of those names own multiple lots within this area.
How do we know that? How do we know?
Exactly.
How do we know?
So our office double checks all of that, but we have property owner records. We look at, that's why the code actually speaks about the director deeming the application complete, because from the time we get the application or the petition from someone, we go through a series of steps to make sure that those someones who have signed on are in fact property owners, and a variety of other things take place. And so we look at HCAD records and other property records to ensure that the petition is in fact accurately submitted.
Okay, my hand has been up, but I haven't been called on. So
Please go ahead, ma'am. You go ahead. And
I'm
thank you.
Cynthia Sample. I was the first one with my hand up. I let all the others go.
Okay.
But, okay, so how many homes are we talking about? How many property lots are we talking about?
I'm gonna go to Jason for that, if you got it there, Jason.
Yes, so there are 51 property lots. 3 of them are vacant.
Okay.
Did everyone catch
51
that?
lots. So what happened?
You're there. We can hear you.
Okay. So how did this come about? Why are we even talking about this? I mean, this to me, why were the people that applied for it, what was their point? Why are they even trying to get this passed? Because I think most of the people don't want it.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if, why was it, obviously they want to make a historic district. That's why.
But why?
Why?
Well, we just,
Because there is some concern about whether or not, my question is, does it prohibit new construction or new designations for a property? Say someone wanted to put a nightclub in on the corner of Emancipation and Wichita, which is where I live, at 2507 Wichita. And to the question about the petition, my name is not on it, but I am in support of it. So I don't know if we should totally focus in on how many of us are not signed in on that petition.
Well,
my concern, can I finish?
Yes.
My concern is, does this help us prevent undesirable businesses such as nightclubs, which we are already surrounded by, from building or occupying an existing structure? Because as we know, City of Houston does not have very strong zoning laws.
Okay.
I think that's
And
a
in my
very good
opinion, it
question.
doesn't matter. In my opinion, it doesn't matter who started it. Is it in our best interest is what the question is tonight.
Thank you, Ms.
Just
Drake.
my opinion.
I see Council Member
Yeah,
Boz.
I just want to say that, let's be clear that the city didn't initiate this application, and it was initiated by petition. But it does have to be approved by 67% of those that own those lots, if I'm not mistaken. And I also want to dispel something regarding the Wichita and Emancipation. There are no plans to sell or have a nightclub. I actually spoke to the owner, who is Earl Nash, who owns the shoe shop, and he says that he would never, ever sell to anyone who wants to open a club. And he, in fact, would not want anything there that he wouldn't want across the street from his own home. So I wanted to answer, dispel that rumor. But the question was valid. Does this designation stop clubs from building in that particular area?
And also, once a person sells, we don't, I mean, we all trust Mr. Nash, who lives on the corner, but what if he is not the owner? A person can buy that property from him and put whatever they want there, and his word is no longer binding to that property.
That's why I want your valid question answered regarding what can go there. Certainly, I know that you can't control anything past when you sell it. But I would like to know the answer to that question.
Right.
Will that preclude any businesses of that nature being built in that 51 unit area, 51 residential area?
No, the historic district council member would not. The historic districts do not regulate use. I want to come, but whatever, we regulate what that club would look like. But I brought this map back up.
In other words, getting this designation would not stop anyone putting a club where they want to once they purchase the land, right?
Make it harder.
So I just don't want people to believe, oh, we get this designation. Let me finish, please. Not saying that you can't, I mean, I don't want people to believe, oh, we get this designation and we have stopped them from building this. That is not what the designation will do. And I just want to be clear about that.
That's absolutely correct. Agree, in total agreement. What does at the moment, I've brought back up this map on minimum lot sizes. So the blocks that are circled in purple, which have a more recent ordinance for them, those blocks do prevent a change in land use. But the light green areas those ordinances were made earlier. So they don't. But if those ordinances were renewed when they come up, that would be a tool for land use. Let's start.
There's a question in the chat that was slightly addressed, but not completely addressed, about the original application, the fact that the original application was amended or expanded. Could you address that, and why was it expanded?
I did address that, but I'll repeat it.
Thank you.
The original application came in, it was reviewed by staff, and after review, it was suggested that the district be made larger. We already at that point had informally confirmation of a majority of people for that district. So at that point, just informally, we were aware that there was more than 67% support for that smaller map. Anyway, but we suggested the larger one. Again, the map is
how is that true when I live on the expanded part? I didn't know about it and didn't want to and don't want to be included.
It's this meeting where you come to know about it. It is intended by the ordinance
in a process that I didn't ask to be included in. And that doesn't seem fair.
I'm on the extended end of it, and I did want to be included in it. I'm just one person and one vote of my house is, but it wasn't like it came in like a thief in the night. There are those of us who asked to be included in it, and I was one of those persons.
And I'm sorry that it has the effect that I'm sorry that we can't do it any different. Well, we have an ordinance. This is what it does. And it may come as a shock to see it, but I promise you, we're at the beginning of this. And if enough people if we don't complete our conversation tonight, if y'all will allow, we will just schedule another meeting and talk it again. We can have as many as we want before we send a ballot to see who wants to do it or not. I'd like to just go ahead. Sure. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask the next question. So did you have a follow-up there?
I did. If one block is not interested and holistically the block is not interested in being included, can we be removed from the map?
Yes. We would look at the percentage of buy-in, but the can you is yes, it can happen. And so we need to see.
What is it? Well, let me ask a better question. What does it take for a block to be removed from the application?
Yeah, for example, it goes back to the contiguity of the neighborhood. As we know, let's see, I'm still not sharing, but all right, let me reshare for a minute. Or Jason, I'm sorry, would you share that map that you have?
Yes,
please?
one more.
If the whole section on the upper left of this drawing, of this map, if that whole section did not want to participate, it would just be taken off because the historic district actually has to be contiguous. It has to be, the properties must be adjacent or diagonally adjacent to one another. So to answer your question, yes, it could happen that you would just take off the whole section.
I'm sorry. I know I may not be next, but it's related to this question or this comment. So if 67% of kind of a single block don't necessarily want to be included, would that entire block be removed, or does it have to be everyone on that block for it to be removed from the map?
We need a contiguous map. So if on Rosedale, if the houses on the north side of Rosedale wanted to be in, and let's say the person closest to the freeway on Rosedale, let's say those 2211 and 2215, they wanted to be in, but the rest of that block did not, and the people across did not. It's just and the numbers don't hit 67, then 2215 and 2211 would not be able to be in the district. Rough. I don't want to make real stiff statements here, but generally speaking, that's the way we're looking for that contiguous district.
Thank you.
Excuse me, well, this is Councilmember again. So the 67% is not just from the respondents, it's from the ownership, the owners, correct?
Owners,
so owners, say for instance, if owners don't even respond at all, okay, that will not be considered to be a yes or a no. It's just that you don't have a number of responses that are needed for this to move forward, correct?
Their director.
In other words, you have 40 people to respond, and so you say 67% of 40. That's not what we're looking at here. It would be 67% of the entire 51 properties, correct?
Council member, the director's muted. Let me see if she can hear me.
Hello, Director Wallace Brown.
We can't hear you yet, Director Wallace Brown. Still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Thank you. So you're going to answer. I'm sorry, the question that I didn't know.
Would you like for me to restate the question?
You muted again. You muted again. You muted again. You muted again.
Okay, let's try that. Does that work?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember, thank you for the question. It's a complicated way that the ordinance reads, but here is essentially what happens. When we send out the response forms, we ask all of the property owners, not people, if there are renters, it goes to the property owners, not the persons living in the structure. And so we ask all the property owners whether or not they support the district. There must be 67% affirmative response. So effectively, if, for instance, one of the properties doesn't return their form, that is counted as a no. We must get 67 affirmative yeses. If we get 67% and the whole area is clustered in one portion of this proposed district, perhaps down on the southeast corner, and there are no yes responses up on the northwest, then we will look at that and we will draw a smaller district around that 67% area, excluding the areas where we had all the no's. So it is, this district boundary may get smaller. It may not get bigger. It can never be bigger than what it is right now, but it may get smaller based on where and how many people affirmatively say yes. Did that answer your question?
I believe so.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. You said it, council member, it is what you, she said what you asked, which was if someone doesn't vote, that's a no.
Okay.
So we do need to receive, and it is of the whole total, 67% of the tract owners in this. Now tract, if a person,
Roman.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. We have a lot more hands that are coming up. I just
we do. We need to go through them. So which are the oldest ones? Terrence, are you able to, does it go from bottom to top or top to bottom?
Well, let's see. I got one that I can't click on, but let's go with Lauren.
Hey there. Yeah, so I asked quite a few questions in the chat, but to clarify the first question I asked in there. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Was to clarify, number one, if there is even an appeal process, if, you know, the district does vote yes, and then what does that look like? And then if we do vote yes, is there an expiration date to a historic district?
There's no expiration date. Once the city doesn't have in place a way to remove it. And then your first question is, let's see. No, I mean, so we have to get this agreement. We would have to eventually have an agreement of a map, and 67% of those owners support it. And then at that point, it's completed. It goes to Historic Commission, most likely for approval, because Historic Commission loves saving parts of Houston, to the City Council. And the ordinance doesn't allow once you have that agreement on the 67, then that's it. You can amend, there's some other complicated little tricks. You can amend whether a building is a contributing building or not if we've labeled that wrong or if we've missed it. But that's a different thing, unless I hope that answers your question. It's kind of a no. It doesn't have and that's interesting, very interesting question that I was actually in my sleep woke up over, because no historic districts that I know of anywhere, and I was president of Preservation Texas for the last 6 years, so I built across preservation orders. I left out that I was a preservation officer at Denton in the North Texas and Brownsville and South Texas, but there are any that I know of, no ordinances for historic districts which have a set end date. The way that the minimum lot size or building line, how it has that 20-year and it's got to be renewed, it doesn't have that. Not that one day it might should, but it doesn't. How about Terrence? Can you keep me moving?
Hey, sorry. Just
oh, sure.
There was one last question related to those, and it was, if we vote no, can we revisit becoming a historic district in the future?
Yes. Well, we can. We need an application again. We
Right.
wouldn't consider it, but if somebody, another 10% group or a smaller area or anything.
Roman, I'd like to just add in, the ordinance does say that if this votes no, there's a 1-year period that it waits out.
Yeah, which you couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's in the city.
I'll let you police that. Terrence, is it?
Yes, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to get to. So next we got, and I'm sorry if we're not going in order. I'm just going in the order that it's on my screen. So we have Joy Sewing.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I want to say hi to everyone there. I am the president of the Riverside Civic Association, and we're the civic association that represents this area. I had a couple of things. I'll make them quick. One, what was the process in terms of notifying the Civic Association and the Super Neighborhood Association about this? Typically, when we do with minimum lot size, we get notifications. We did not get anything on this. And so when we were approached by neighbors on Wichita who were concerned about an application being presented for their property and they weren't aware, we weren't aware either. And I believe that there is some kind of process to notify people because we are the registered civic association for the neighborhood.
Correct. And so I'll give you the answer to that, Ms. Sewing. And you know, we chatted a little earlier, but I want to say that, so the ordinance says that we will endeavor to notify all of the civic clubs, and it's on me. I'll just say it's on me. The staff was working on it together, but you as president of Civic Club should have got that note. However, we got you to the table. And we're glad that we're at this super neighborhood group. Turned out we did notify somebody. We must not got it to the right person. I know that I checked with Jason. He said he did notify someone on that side. The ordinance says that we definitely have to, by mail, notify every property owner. We did that. And then it says that we should try to notify the other groups. But let's be clear, we want to notify the other groups. We want to notify everybody. And we want to have this conversation. So
okay, I want to go real quickly. The second question I have is that it seems like the a process for doing this is much easier than getting minimum lot size restriction, which we have worked in throughout the neighborhood to get block by block, and it is a very time-consuming and cumbersome process. But this seems that you can set this up pretty easily with getting a vote. Am I understanding that correctly?
Director, will you help me with that question, please? And you're muted. You're muted. I can see you're talking. You're muted. Sorry.
You're
Easy
still
process.
muted. There, now
But
we can.
it's not. This is a very difficult, and 67% is a very high bar. In the 5 years, more than 5 years, I'm sorry. 7 years since the ordinance change requiring a 67%, we have only been able to create one new historic district. So it may seem to you like this is an easier process, but it is not. This is cumbersome, confusing, and difficult to get the 67%.
Okay, another question I have is, if you're looking at it, say this historic district happens, is there a possibility to strike, say, windows that residents can replace their windows and not have the restrictions of the historical, whatever, I don't know what the designation. Can you set up a district that has customized things that the neighbors want or don't want?
Do you want me to take that, Roman?
Joy and I talked a little bit about this, and it raised a question in my mind. Normally, the historic district has to meet the 11 criteria that are established in the ordinance today. And that would mean no, you can't take out historic windows. It caused me, Director Wallace Brown, to ask, I wonder if when we did create a district, in creating the ordinance for that district, could that ordinance have a caveat in it such that allowed more flexibility there? And
Joy, the answer is we've never done it that way. My answer would be it's not in the ordinance creating the district, but it would be something that would be explored in creating the design guidelines. When a district is created, it must follow the overall city requirement for historic preservation. But each district, because some are Victorian, some are mid-century, some are 30s and 40s, their individual character differs between district and district. And so each district that is created gets or should get their own design guidelines, which addresses the specific character of those structures in that district. Is it possible to identify in a set of design guidelines that historic windows could be changed without a C of A? That's something I'd actually have to talk to the legal department about. I don't know the answer to that. Part of me says yes, and then part of me says, but it goes contrary to the 11 criteria. So I think it's a great idea that we've never explored before, but I don't have an answer for you. I'm happy to talk to Kim and get back with you with an answer, though.
My last question is, a number of people are concerned that this will increase their, not just their property value, but their property taxes. And for many of us who want to be here and want to raise our children here, we are not looking to sell our property and not looking for that return right now. So you mentioned that that there's a new ordinance that the county appraiser can take into consideration with your value being in a historic district. Can a county appraiser actually increase your value because you're in a historic district significantly such that it increases the property taxes?
And they can't
I think it's an untested rule. I don't know the answer to that.
Well,
go ahead, Roman. Do you have a better elaboration on that?
Well, just a little bit. So the first law, the new law, says they can use it and take into consideration. It's certainly the intention that they would, when that was passed, that they were intending, some state legislator up in Dallas, a legislator up in Dallas was doing that so people could get their values lowered. Now, it's a funny thing, and this we had this conversation earlier, but typically historic districts are known to stabilize values and increase values in comparison to adjacent neighborhoods. That's kind of there's a lot of studies that indicate that. And I can share some of those with y'all if you want. So this is an interesting topic. I don't think you can't say that there's a prima facie case that just by making a historic district, your value of your house is more. No, that doesn't exist. County appraisers aren't doing that now.
Okay.
And I would add that if you talk to property owners in other historic districts in Houston, particularly in the Heights, they would say that properties inside the Heights are valued at lower than those outside. It's an answer that hasn't been answered.
And people making the decisions about what we can do with the property, if it's a historic district, will there be a representation from our neighbor, our community on that, whatever decision-making body?
We need to move on.
Okay.
So the Houston Archaeological and Historic Commission is appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. And there are, 13 positions on it. They serve for 2 years. And so absolutely there is a possibility to have a change in membership so that various historic districts including Riverside Terrace would be represented.
Okay, so the next person on my list, and I apologize in advance, Cynthia Goudreau-Jackson.
Yes, I have a quick question. I'm just looking at the boundaries of the historic district compared to the number of houses that are totally in Riverside. I find that ironic that it's only a couple of streets that want to, quote unquote, become historic compared to all the other beautiful homes that they have in the neighborhood. And then my question would be, the homes that are in the selected area, how many of those are actually lived in with the homeowners? Or are they investment properties? Or what is the purpose of that? What's that percentage of how many homes that are in Riverside Terrace versus the small percentage that we are saying that is historic? See, that's what I don't get. Why that little 2-street block? Why just that block and not so many other beautiful homes in Riverside Terrace?
Well, I wish the application was bigger and there was that kind of buy-in. I'm gonna check someone into that. Okay, but the answer is that no one over there has it. Our office is 5 people now. When I signed on, it was 2. We don't do a lot of recruitment. People come to us. All of the landmarks we do on average 2 a month. Those are people who either go to Preservation Houston or call our office and they want their property to be preserved forever. They want that structure there forever. So it just so happens that this is where someone has come up with wanting to do this. It could have happened south of South McGregor. It could happen in another area. This is just where someone has taken the initiative to raise the question.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though, that whoever raised the question, yes. Who set that boundary? Who set it?
They did.
Wichita to Rosedale. I mean, why? Why not go past Arbor? Why not? You see,
because the applicant couldn't get 10%.
Yeah.
It's who the applicant knows. It's the reach of, if this group of people get this, so here's who we know right now. If, because you have raised a good point. This meeting, I mean, let's say the people wanted it, sure. If people wanted to be in part of a larger district, we could have a new application with a larger area, but we don't.
And it should be mentioned that the original application was expanded, because I would really like to see the boundary of the original application and understand why it was expanded to the point that it was expanded.
Well, I know what you're saying, but the original application is this application, because the first accepted application as a full application is this boundary. But the other was a smaller area. I think it didn't cross. Sorry, I don't remember.
It didn't cross Emancipation. I believe you all
that's what it was,
expanded
right.
and included Rosedale on the other side of Emancipation. And that's what I'd like to understand. Why was
right. So another question.
Yeah, we got, so just out of, I just want to make sure that everyone understands, and I'm sorry, the vacuum cleaner in the background. We have 15 minutes left and we have 2 more questions, and I'm sure there will be more. So we're going to move on to Shannon Buggs, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shannon Buggs.
I can't hear you.
Ms. Buggs, you got muted. We could hear you, but then we didn't hear
Sorry, no, it was me. I forgot to unmute. I apologize.
You're unmuted now. We can hear you now.
Okay, everyone. Hi. Shannon Buggs. I am a director in the Mayor's Office of Complete Communities. Glad to be on with my colleagues from the planning department. I also, though, have a personal stake in this, in that I live in the area, and I did have a question around the boundaries as well. What I've noticed is that no one who submitted this application has seemed to have spoken this evening to give some clarity around that. And I would appreciate if any of those who are a part of the group that submitted the application would share a little bit of their thinking around it. But Director Wallace-Brown, when I heard you say that the boundaries could not be expanded, that did cause me to pause, because it looks like in the boundaries, it's kind of dog-eared to a couple of properties that are in blocks where the rest of the block was not included into the conversation. And Wichita, it's 2 blocks up close to the freeway, or almost to the freeway, but it's not the blocks behind it that get closer to Ennis. And so I'm just trying to better understand the thinking around the boundaries of this particular area, because you have that one little one on Rosedale, but it doesn't go over to the parts of Wichita that would be making it contiguous. And if there is no changing it to give everyone an opportunity to understand how this historic district that will be near them will impact the rest of the area, it would be important for, I think, a broader conversation for the residents in the area, for us to understand what kind of an island of a historic district could do to benefit or detract from the overall neighborhood.
So I'm not sure where the question is on that, but let me start by saying that we have historic districts that are 1 block long, that are one side of 1 block long, or that are square miles big. So there is no standard no standard shape or size of a historic district in Houston. The idea, though, is to get both sides of a street, because the facing properties then benefit each other, so to speak. And so when the applicant sat down and talked with us and showed us where his original ideas and where he knew he could get support for his application, we looked at that, and there were some outlying properties that were not, kind of included in the big mass. And that's why we spoke with him about you have more than the 10%, and you can, based on who you believe you can get on the petition, this is a general area. I actually don't know why the Rosedale property, the 2006 property on Rosedale was included. I don't remember if I even recognized that it was included at the time. You know, the 5002 Wichita and the 2317 property, they are kind of outliers, and they may or may not want to stay in the district. So the boundaries are, you know, just a sample area from which we will, you know, in which we will introduce the concept, talk with the residents as we're doing tonight, and we'll probably do many other times. And then what will probably happen from this point is that this shape, this boundary, these properties will probably not be what ultimately goes to either the HAHC or the city council for their approval. Rarely is the original proposal what ultimately goes to city council because of the need to get so many property owners on board.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Well, the question is, and I'm sorry, I wasn't as clear. Are you going to have another meeting that would involve the residents of the other portions that are outside of it or close to this boundary so that everyone can have a better understanding of what is being proposed? I know that the notifications did not go out to maybe everyone who was included within the boundaries, but there are other neighbors that will be interested to know, especially if that one piece of property or those 3 pieces of property that you called out are kept in the district and are on blocks where the rest of the block would not be a part of it.
Yeah, so we're never opposed to having another meeting with more people. That's what we do. But that is not typically what we do. The properties, because this is a property owner opt-in process in the same way that minimum lot size and in the same way that minimum block and parking in yards programs are opt-in. We had not intended to have a larger third ward meeting about this. We talk with super neighborhoods on a regular basis about historic preservation in a general context, but not about district applications beyond the boundaries of the application. Happy to do it. If you think, I mean, if the group here or if the applicants or if Roman thinks that it's a valuable effort, we would certainly go forward and do that.
Okay, great. I think our Civic Club president made clear that she would be open to having
that'd be terrific.
A broader conversation. Yeah. So
yeah, and we would too.
I'd just like to add, sorry, Roman, I'd just like to add that we received a number of calls today from people who are outside of the boundary and emails, and they are on the meeting today. So we're very open to expanding this conversation to anyone outside of the proposed district. And we will not tell them that they cannot attend by any stretch of the imagination.
And the first point, Ms. Buggs, that you pointed out was if any else wanted to speak on the applicant, you had mentioned if the applicant or anybody, that's what you said at first, and I was hoping we'd hear.
Yes.
But it's just a public meeting. We actually have a pending historic district coming up to city council soon, and it's a very, very small district. But the applicant is elderly, and she didn't speak out much in the meetings. But anyway, that was your first point, and I was hoping maybe.
Right. It would be appreciated by, I think, all of the neighbors on this conversation to hear from the folks who think that this is an important addition to our neighborhood, to hear from them about their thinking on it. But it also sounded like if there was a property owner that controlled 10% of a particular area, that person alone could put an application for this. So if there was a property owner that within this particular boundary, if just one person controlled 10% of the property there, that they could make application on their own for this without having buy-in from anyone else. So it'd be helpful just to get a better sense, I think, from the folks who do think this is important, to just hear from them to share what their reasoning is so that the rest of us can be more clued into the value that they see in moving.
Yeah, and to answer the short part too, I think we can look at figuring out how to have the next meeting and have it be broader. The broader, the better. I actually think we probably could find other groups of areas where people absolutely would want to say. It's really the question is, do you want your structure to stay around for a really long time? And that's what preservation is about. We have Jack May.
Hi. I was aware of the petition and I had the opportunity to be one of the applicants, but since it wasn't necessary to be an applicant, I didn't bother. I'd imagine that's true for a couple of other folks I know. So the only reason, as I understand it, that there was only the short list of applicants is that was all.
Oh, you got muted there.
I think I said all that I need to. We could have had many more people as part of the application, but it wasn't necessary. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got 6 minutes left, and we have Ms. Lopez.
Before you go, Ms. Lopez, I'll state again, I know we have a time limit, but we're not. We'll find a way to keep this conversation.
We'll stay as long as you need us to stay tonight.
Ms. Lopez.
You're muted if you're speaking.
Well, yes, Ms. Lopez, I can barely hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, can you hear me though?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Like you say, it's 10%. Like the other lady were mentioned. What if a person like a Sid, he gets 3 lots on Rosedale and he buy into another one, so he'll get 4 lots. Okay. So let's say this round he doesn't make it to 67%, and then a year later he reapplied. Can he do that? Because he practically controls almost 10% of the tract. So he keep on coming back and applying. People still have to get involved. And I'd like to know what is his intention to have this in historic district. A Steve, Ola, and Martha was the applicants. What is the benefit for them to apply for historical district when River Oaks don't even apply for that?
I want to address that too, Ms. Lopez. I got you, and I think Asif is the next person that wants to sign up to talk. But I did want to comment on one thing about River Oaks, because that gets brought up occasionally. Why do they have a not historic district? What they do have are very strong deed restrictions and a very organized civic organization. You can't move in River Oaks without getting approval. You can't. It's a tightly they don't need a historic district. They kind of have their own power structure, if you will, over their deed restrictions. Next person to speak was Asif.
Yes, so I am one of the applicants. I live at 2515 Rosedale. My neighbor, Jack May, just a few minutes ago said that there was no need to get more signatures because we already had the minimum that we needed to get this process going. So why? I will give my reasons for why I think this is beneficial. I'm not here to debate anyone. I will just give the reasons and then I'll give some facts or very strong opinions about where I think this thing is headed. People have talked about Riverside Terrace in specific and Third Ward in general, which covers a really large area, as being a historically significant district. I've had many conversations with many people over the years who, and they're not using the technical term that this is a recognized by city council or by the city by law, a historic district. People just speak about it in a generic way that there's a lot of history here, and there is no doubt that this neighborhood represents the 20th century. It's a microcosm of the history of the United States. A lot of things happened here from the time that it was proposed. There was the Great Depression, there was World War II, there was a tearing down, there was anti-Semite deed restrictions. that were in place. World War II happened. A lot of views changed about minorities, be they religious or racial minorities. The federal government struck down those laws post-World War II and allowed anybody to live wherever they pleased to live. And the racial composition changed. There were a lot of historical forces at work. The racial composition of this neighborhood started changing in the early 50s. It became a primarily African-American neighborhood. It saw its downs. It saw some very terrible years and decades. And now this neighborhood is, I believe, slowly coming onto a solid footing. And one reason I live in this neighborhood is because of its diversity and because of its historical character. Okay, so that's kind of the broader canvas. More specifically, I have attended meetings where we have sort of tried to boil the ocean, where to the points that have been made several times earlier in this meeting, that why can't we explode this thing and why don't we just include all of Third Ward? My experience has been that you can either try to go big and fail, or you can try to go small and have a better chance of success and lead by example. So this is just the first step. Why did we apply with this particular boundary? The boundary that was originally proposed was even smaller than this. After a lot of conversations with neighbors, property owners who are proud of the structures that we have, I am very proud of living in this neighborhood, not only because of its community, not only because of its location, but also because of the wonderful nature of the properties that exist here. I came from an area, I used to live in West University. I lived there for about 20 years. And I saw what happens when you don't have a historical designation in place. It was a neighborhood that had historic significance, but then it got destroyed by the forces of capitalism, because everybody, the forces of capitalism had a profound impact on West University as an example, because I had front row seats to that transformation. And as the values went up, there was no protection given to anything, whether it had historical value or it didn't. I don't want this to happen to this neighborhood. I think there is an opportunity here to take this jewel of a neighborhood and starting small and recognizing, right, I live right across the street from probably one of the finest examples of Mediterranean architecture that exists in Houston. I'm talking about 2520 Rosedale, which is at the corner of Live Oak and Rosedale. That property, the owners of that property a few years ago initiated getting that property identified and designated as a historic landmark, which it has gotten. And now I am so happy to say that I live across from this jewel, always knowing that whether for the rest of my life and the life of whoever that lives here, whether it is my descendants or its other owners, that this beautiful property is going to be around forever, forces of nature notwithstanding. I mean, a hurricane can come and destroy, or a fire can come and destroy, but all human efforts are in place to keep this thing perpetuated. I live on a block where I believe that the 67% of the residents are going to vote in favor of the historic designation because they live here and they are here because they want to be here. They own these properties and they have no interest in selling their properties to the highest bidder who can come in and put whatever they want to put in there, because the minimum lot size, while it is a tool that Roman talked about, And the setback is a tool that is in place, but there is no tool in place right now that can keep somebody coming in, demolishing an existing structure, putting up as big of a structure as they want. There is no limit to the height of structure that they can put in. In fact, the Houston building regulations allow up to a 65-foot tall house that can be built next to a single-family residence, as long as it just complies with the permeability limits and so on. But the size of the house can be any size that can be built, and it can be any architectural style that can be built. And I can tell you, if you want to see ugly neighborhoods, you can go see West University as an example, or you can go see the Montrose area as an example. We want to preserve our character. We want to preserve a sense of community, and having made investments in this area, I am also keenly aware as an entrepreneur or as a businessman that I want to protect the value of my
All right, Jason,
property.
I'm leaving it up to you.
Hello? You know,
No.
things change. Look at the whole city of Houston changing phase. Couple more 100 years, it'll change. And why you want to restrict your land? Look at the astral world. One time it was
Ms.
wonderful.
Lopez.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lopez.
It wasn't.
Ms. Lopez, we have to get to the next question. I'm sorry.
Okay, excuse me, this is Councilmember Carolyn Evans Shabazz, if I may. I really listened to the presentation that the petitioner made, but I think that there are other tools that could be used that can protect the neighborhoods, and that would be just the same as River Oaks would be deed restrictions. Deed restrictions could stop certain types of architecture or certain types of businesses coming into the community. And I know that to be true because I currently live a little bit further down Rosedale, and there was an attempt to put townhouses on Arbor, on the corner of Arbor and Sawyer. But because we have deed restrictions, they were not able to do that. So I don't know if this area has deed restrictions, but so I would think that that would be one that could perhaps give the community more of a control of what's coming in the neighborhood, because we were already told that the historic district will not keep certain businesses out. So why not go with a tool that is being widely used and encouraged, which is deed restrictions? And they could be put in place, and that could help people to not have a club come across the street from their house, or not have a townhouse built across the street.
I take your point. I have seen attempts to change implement deed restrictions fail already, and this doing this does not preclude putting in deed restrictions. I
am so absolutely glad that you made that comment. And that is because there needs to be something that requires the city to look at and when they're coming for permits, they should be required to determine if there are deed restrictions in a neighborhood. Because I have found that people are getting permits and building certain edifices that are not in line with the deed restrictions, but nobody checked. And so it needs to be something some teeth to the deed restrictions. It's no good to have deed restrictions and nobody checks to see if they're there. And so that is another topic of conversation that I would like to pursue. But deed restrictions do work if they are checked before the permit is issued.
Well, I think that's what makes River Oaks so unique in the fact that I'm sure that their civic association is the ones that are providing those checks and making sure that their neighborhood stays the way that they want it. So, we need to think about
that. But I think that it needs to be, if the city is going to have people to do deed restrictions, at what point should the city take responsibility to check to see if this is a restricted area? That should be a part of the checklist. When you check to see are they building behind the property line? Are they building this? Are they building that? That should be a checklist. And the deed restrictions portion should be an area that they can readily check because they should be on file. And that way that can be signed off on as well. But that's what's going on. You're absolutely correct. People are more diligent about doing it perhaps in River Oaks. But a lot of times in this area, people don't even know that people are building certain things until they see the framework. I think it needs to be far before that. And that's why I think it's incumbent that the permitting department look to see who has deed restrictions before they issue a permit.
Thank you, council member. Thank you. Let's see. I see the next hand up is Ms. Shannon Shavers.
Yes, how's everybody doing? My mother, Ola Morris, is my mother. And hello to everyone. I wish everybody a Happy New Year. My mother's not on visually, but I'm the one who started this process. My mother's brick was taken off of her home. We live on Rosedale and Live Oak. Her garage faces a gentleman's house that Mr. Ossoff was talking about, who since passed earlier at the end of this year. And I've gotten so many calls from people asking me who I was, who I represented, what was my intentions, investors, realtors. I went to our neighbor had gotten sick. So I went to our neighbor, and it was because my mother had had water damage in her master bedroom 3 or 4 times. And my mom since have been sick since that time. And I promised my mother that I would find money to fix her house. And I found her a grant. Now, because the brick was taken off, we could not deem my mother's house historical. So I reached out to the neighbors, and not every neighbor, not 20, 30, 50 neighbors. No, I reached out to our immediate neighbors. And so that's when family friend deemed their house historical because in 5th Ward, because they are deemed the original people from the Louisiana Purchase. She helped me to meet Mr. McAllen, and we have gone with this process. And I mean, there's information I really wish, and I know he will, because Mr. McAllen's he's very informational, to give a meeting from A to Z what this involves. And I think if everybody would listen and just to take in the information and go out and do their own research. I do too. When I moved to 3rd Ward, I was amazed that we have all these clubs. So don't give me, Councilman Evans, that the deed restrictions. So I'm just, someone asked, I took the name down, but Ms. Bugs asked who started this. I did. And my name's Shannon Shavers. My mother lives at 2600 Rosedale on the corner of Live Oak and Rosedale. And it mainly because of her, not because I was trying to reach out to the world, because I wasn't. I was just trying to help my mother. And through the help of some other people, Mr. McAllen and some other people from the city, and maybe some other people in Pleasantville and some other situations, what my mother needs might happen other ways. So, I do, Mr. McAllen, I hope you have a meeting to where everybody could come back and you can thoroughly explain the process of a historical district from A to Z, every ins and out, every turn, every ups and downs, every possible negative that is possible. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody else being on here and asking questions, because it is a lot to take in.
Thank you, Ms. Shane.
So, thank you.
Roman, Phyllis Moss is next with her hand raised.
I want to comment here, though. Thank you, Jason. To the point, in a brief way, of what Ms. Shavers is talking about, this should be pointed out. I'm glad if you've hung on this long, let me explain this. The Texas Government Land Office, is spending the Harvey funds. They're awarding those funds. And what they have finally, the Texas Historical Commission, they have to report to the Texas Historic Commission when they're going to work on properties. If the Texas Historic Commission tells them a property is historic, that changes the their thinking. And in the case of, for example, Pleasantville, there was a lot of activity and a lot of action, and they pressed on the Texas Historic Commission with the support of our office to say that Pleasantville is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The THC agreed. We had Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee get on a call with a big call, a lot of neighbors, just like this call. And the GLO said, we agree. Your neighborhood's important.
Some stupid. People like, I want this old.
Will someone mute that caller, please? We got Jason. If you can find that mute button. What happened is that in Pleasantville, instead of a limit of $65,000 to repair houses, the GLO is now awarding up to $200,000 to repair houses. And if the house can't be repaired for $200,000, they build a new house. But that new house now has to fit in with that neighborhood. They had suggested to build pier and beam houses that don't fit in Pleasantville because those homes are on a slab with an integrated garage and they're brick veneer. And that now is what they're building in that neighborhood. So there is a benefit for historic designation. It isn't required to have a historic district to do that. Actually, all you need is to be eligible for listing on the National Register, which Riverside Terrace is eligible if they need to make that determination. And we were talking about that's a little TMI. Let's go with Philip Moss, please. Philip Moss, you go right ahead, please, if you're there.
Phyllis Moss, you're muted. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can.
Yes, I live on Wichita. So again, I was aware that there was some considerations of a historic district on Rosedale. So when the 2,500 and 2,400 blocks of Wichita were added and we received the letter, myself and some of my neighbors, we were quite surprised. I have a couple of questions about a couple of properties on our block, which would lead me to question, are they even historic? The house on the corner of Live Oak in Wichita was recently moved there. That's a wood frame house that was moved it was purchased in Acres Home, cut in half, and moved on the corner of Wichita and Live Oak. And then there's a house right across the street from me, which is a beautiful house, but it was built in the last maybe 15 or 20 years. And so that leads me to question, are these houses considered historic in terms of the other houses that have been here since the 40s and the 50s and even older than that? I just have some questions about that.
Sure. A home that was like that was moved there would be considered not part of the original development, or in other words, not part of the period of significance. It would be deemed non-contributing, and that home actually could be altered or demolished without a certificate of appropriateness. Altered, I think it needs one. And the other structure, I'm sorry, what was the other case of the one from?
It's a new construction.
It's a new construction.
Same thing. Those would be considered non-contributing structures. They didn't fit within the historic context of the neighborhood. They can be demolished without a permit. Please, my brain is a little, I think that's the answer on that. And if they're altered, they need a C of A.
No, they would need a permit for demolition as any other structure in Houston would need, but they would not need a C of A. They would not need a certificate.
But would they still be considered part of the historic district if this were to pass? But if they wanted to be demolished, they'd have to get permission?
Yes. And the reason is, ma'am, because if someone constructs, so let's say they were both demolished and someone wanted to construct something new on it. If it is in the district, whatever is constructed on that site must be compatible with the historic character of the nation,
They're not compatible now.
No,
they're not even compatible now. Neither one of them. And that's not being a negative or derogatory, but they're just not.
No, I understand that.
I went to city council on the house on Live Oak in Wichita because it didn't meet the setback and restrictions, but because they changed the address. It was originally a Wichita address when the neighborhood was created, but the owner of the lot was able to have the city change the address to Live Oak so that he could change the house's position from facing Wichita to face Live Oak.
No, I understand
But
what you're
anyway,
saying. I understand that they're not compatible now, but if they were demolished and something new were to be built there, it would be required to be compatible with the historic nature of the neighborhood.
but they couldn't they couldn't even demolish their own homes without getting a permission once they have once it's deemed historic.
No, that's not true. If it is
Oh,
in the
okay.
if it is non-contributing in the historic district, they must get a permit, just like it would be required if there weren't a historic district. They must get a permit from the city of Houston, but they do not need any special permission from the historic district to get demolished.
I get you. Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to take the next question, Eric.
The next one will be by Eric Mbu, if I pronounce that correctly. Eric? Check to make sure that you're unmuted. Eric?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off what the lady that just spoke. So the new structure would have to meet the standards of the structures in the historic district, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so for me, somebody was concerned and asked me to come in this meeting. So the person who owns that property, if he was to do that and try to sell it, and a new buyer was trying to do a different design, that would hinder him from selling his property. Is that true? If it doesn't meet that the historic district structure, correct?
He could
Because
sell
he has
his
to design it to.
He could sell his property to anyone, but whoever purchased it would be required to follow the guidelines of the historic district.
Yes, and so that limits him to the type of people who would come there, because sometimes some architects don't want to deal with historic district areas, right? Because of all the regulations to build. So what I see in this community, it seems nice to make a historic district for 100 years, 200 years, but these people are locked in and nobody can foresee the future. So I think Councilwoman Shabazz is right about these restrictions as opposed to historic districts, because people are looking at their own personal feelings and gains for the community. I understand it. Don't get me wrong, but then you're limiting everyone else to the type of clients or to what they can do with their property. And when we talk about these districts, and especially the historical context, and then we look at equity of equity, gentrification, etc., then everyone in here sounds nice and all, but it limits them to what they can do and how they can sell their property. You never know. Somebody's parents might be ill and they can't do anything with that property because they can't get a buyer who wants to come in and deal with the red tape and not being able to build a structure for their family that they want. And so those are things I think we need to consider. But at the same time, Councilwoman Shabazz is right. We need to look at the district restrictions. And so I'm just here for somebody in this neighborhood that I've had a good conversation with. And I just hope they all make the right decision. But I do understand holding the historical significance of it. But Third Ward has changed, Allen Parkway has changed. And for these people who get bought out of these lands, they don't get anything for it. And so I don't know. It's a tough thing, but it's a wonderful conversation to have. It starts here. So thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
No, thank you. Those were great comments. Thank you, sir.
Hello, this is council member again, and I'm going to say that I think it would be particularly difficult for people to come in 2022 and build an edifice similar to that which was built in 1940 and 1950 to be in line with the other structures that are in the historical district. So that could be a problem. And here again, you know, this is not my decision per se, it's the decision of the homeowners. But I want to be very clear that certainly we want the protections, but we may not necessarily want the restrictions. And if there is an avenue for providing the protections, I think that maybe we need to look at that as opposed to doing something that could be restrictive to people in the future. And again, it's you know, whatever, if 67% of the people decide that's what they want and it comes to council, I will support it. But I just want people to be mindful as they look at this. And also, I think it would be helpful if a one-pager or so could be distributed with some of these questions to let people have a clear understanding of what this historical district means, the protections that it will afford, as well as if there are other avenues such as deed restrictions that could provide that same protection. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Councilwoman Shabazz. I think also they need to understand the pros and cons. Councilwoman Shabazz is
That's
speaking
exactly
some.
what I mean. The pros and cons of doing this, and maybe even a comparison between doing this and doing deed restrictions. Because I think that, you know, because this historical district designation is not going to protect you from having people come and put certain businesses in the area, and of course we've already talked about the city not having zoning. I think deed restrictions are incumbent on areas that want to preserve the quality of life. But here again, it's not my decision, but I want to be clear that people need a clear understanding before they vote on this particular initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Thank you. Mr. May, you've had your hand up for quite a while.
Thank you. I've lived here on this house of Rosedale for more than 20 years. And in the early 2000s, we spent 3 or 4 years and dozens of meetings trying to get deed restrictions. It's an incredibly difficult and complex process because it affects everybody. This is a more straightforward process, in my opinion. And I think that pursuing deed restrictions is just fine, but we're not going to get it done in my lifetime. So that's why I'm very happy that this has been proposed. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. May. Ms. Sample?
Yes, I don't know how much longer, like Mr. May, you know, I don't know how much longer I'll be here, but the property that I have is to be passed to my children. And I don't want to put restrictions on them that would make it more difficult to have repairs done because of a historical district notation. So I just think it's more difficult. It's already expensive now to take care of properties, but having this label as a historical place, it just makes it more difficult. I also have another question. The property that I have is some apartments on Rosedale. And I don't think these apartments were built when the original homes were built on that street because they look different from any other structures. So like the other house that we were talking about that doesn't look like the neighborhood, would that be not a part of, because it's not brick, it's not a house?
It's very likely those are they in the middle of the block there between, yes. I think I see those. I'm not 100% sure, but I would lean towards they would be like those other buildings. They would be non-contributing structures.
Mm-hmm. But if they were torn down, if something else was built there, then it would need to be like the neighborhood.
It needs to fit in with the neighborhood. And now, just to one point about fitting in, it can be a contemporary homes. Homes get built in all of our 22 historic districts occasionally, and they're built of contemporary materials and contemporary means, but just the shape and proportion and how they face the street is what gets preserved. So you can't build lot line to lot line, and well, you already have that protection. Well, I'll stop there. If you don't have another, do you have another question, Ms. Sample?
No, but you have to get approval. Everything you have to go through a process.
Yes.
It takes it longer.
A little bit, yeah. Next, but you already have the drawings. It's not a. We work pretty rapid, you know, on a new construction that would go to commission. So it's probably on the high side, a month and a half turnaround from the time.
This is Asif Mahmood. I would like
go ahead, Mr. Asif.
Observation and a comment.
Karen Wells had her hand up first. I'm sorry, Asif, if you don't mind. I've been trying to watch this. Karen.
Thank you. So my first question is, I'm looking at Wichita, and there's one property on Wichita that's in the district, What about the other houses on that street?
Yeah, those were not included in the petition, so they would not be considered, they don't have the possibility of being included in the district.
Okay, I thought it was continuous, but not.
Well, I mean, it's what you're looking at. If you're looking at the screen, the dashed line represents the fullest extent that the district could be, because that is what the petition represented.
Okay, and does it matter if it's a commercial property?
No, the historic districts don't deal with use. What they deal with is compatibility of appearance. And so, you know,
so you could run a daycare, clothing store, that nature out of your home?
In the same way you can today, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry,
Thank
Ms. Wells, we had, Asef was going to say something next. We want to make sure he was responding to an earlier inquiry.
Okay, you couldn't have the clothing store if you had the deed restrictions.
Correct.
So may I speak now?
Yes, please.
We have not heard from many of the people that are on this meeting, and I don't know who all is in this meeting. But having done a fair amount of legwork and working with some of our neighbors, a couple of whom are on the meeting, one might get the impression from at the conclusion of this meeting that there seem to be more voices against the historic district than for the historic district. It appears to me either a lot of the supporters have not participated today, or they never joined the meeting at all. And I just want people to know that there is a lot of support for the historic district, the way it is drawn. And if it was to shrink some, there might even be more support in terms of percentage wise than the way it's configured right now. I have, and some of our neighbors have done a fair amount of work, have spoken to a lot of people. I don't know if they're at the meeting today or not, but there is a lot of support. And I believe that some subset of this, if not the district as it is currently configured this evening, but I am convinced that there's a subset of this that will get the 67% vote. And I want our friends at the city, and I want our neighbors that are on the call to not go away with the impression that this Riverside Terrace and this piece of Riverside Terrace is not in favor of a historic district, because it's like elections. Sometimes the poll takers are confused with the outcome of the election because they have been talking to the wrong people, or the people that gave a different opinion than the person that spoke for the person that actually wins the election. So I just want to say that there is a lot of support here, and I feel confident that we are going to have success in establishing the first official historic district in Riverside Terrace. I cannot say that it's going to look exactly like it does now, but there is a historic district that I believe is coming.
I believe, I appreciate that, Asif, and I live right down the street from you. I own the apartments, and you've never said anything to me. We've never had this conversation, and all the people that you've talked to, you've never mentioned any of this to me until I got the letter. And other people that I have talked to have not spoken with you. So I don't know. Confusing people. I don't know who the group is that you're talking to that are so in favor of this, but it's like a group of people that are trying to take over the neighborhood. But I don't think it's a good thing for us. People that I've talked to agree that it would not be in our benefit. We've been taking care of this neighborhood and Riverside Terrace since the 50s. And we didn't have services and we were still there. Now we're beginning to get better services as things are changing. But we want to have this neighborhood around for when we pass and our children can have, you know, inherit properties that we have like we did. Most of the people there have inherited properties from their families. And we want to keep it like that. And we want to make it affordable so that they can continue to take care of the properties.
In favor of his tree house or his 20-foot vegetation wall.
So that's
thank
all
you, Ms.
I have
Sample.
to say.
Thank you, Ms. Sample.
You're welcome.
And well, so I see it kind of the same hands up again. Mr. May, do you have another comment?
Fix DJ a plate for me.
I did not intend to have my hand up.
No problem. Ms. Wells, also your hand is still up. Do you also have another comment?
I'm sorry, no, I don't.
Mr. Eric, do you have another comment?
Yes, I have a comment. I really do, because Asif, you said you came to this neighborhood from Rice Village, correct? When they were gentrifying that area, were you in? I'm just curious as to, did he try to fight for historic district there, and what happened? I'm just curious. I just want to know his frame of thought before I state my.
I'm not inclined to have a conversation in this forum. You can come to my house and we can have a conversation offline.
Okay. Okay. The reason I ask, just like the lady with the apartments, no one can foresee the future, but I'll tell you this: as we see gentrification happening in our own neighborhoods around Houston, if a historical district is enacted, and these folks have real prime real estate, and they can't do anything with it except go through red tape of fighting the city or fighting whoever just so that they can get this type of structure that they want, but they're locked into a historical district conditions. Okay, those are things that they are aware of, and they're saying it because they want to pass these properties on to their kids. And you know what kids do when they don't want to fight with the city? They let these properties go, and then the properties get sold in tax sales, etc. Because when you look at what has happened to our communities, a lot of kids move out of these homes, move to the suburbs, or move to other states, get good jobs, and they're like, no, I don't want to deal with that mess. And so it sounds nice, but those are things to also consider.
Do you live in the neighborhood?
No, I have somebody that lives in the neighborhood that asked me to come on this conversation.
Oh, okay. Just checking. Thank you.
Yes, I am very, very, very aware of a lot of these issues. I speak about it, and some people introduced me to some people in this neighborhood. That's the only way I knew about it. But I'm not saying yes or no. I'm not. Sure. What is it called? Dog fight in this thing. But honestly, like Councilwoman Shabazz, we have to look at things at a different perspective. Absolutely. And equity and gentrification. Go ahead.
Thank you. We've got a lot of people call. To your point, as a native Houstonian who's had real estate fixed up properties, all my buddies own billions of dollars worth of stuff. What's interesting is when you look at like the Houston Heights, which has been preserved, or North Hill, and you have bungalows of 1,500 square foot wooden bungalow that cannot be demolished, and people pay $750,000 for those bungalows on a regular basis. Historic preservation, the case for historic preservation and the economic case for its existence, and the reason cities promote it is it's a strong, it works, right? It helps land values. There's no, that can be, I can send you a bunch of reports on that, but it is customizable and it is up to the neighborhood and it is personal. My mother lives at right on McGregor Way, right behind Mosaic Tower. She's the only resident there anymore. And she will not leave that house. And, so I'm very familiar with it, with the values and with the idea of passing on a property. Unfortunately, in her case, she's getting a lot of flood water there, and the city's actually compounded that. It's a different question. I want to let in somebody, and we're at 7:38, y'all. We've been on for a little bit. Ms. Lopez, I see your hand up, and I see Eric's hand up, but I don't want the conversation.
I forgot to put mine down. Sorry. Let me take it down.
It sounds to me like we've had a very robust conversation, and I'm kind of struck here. It sounds like we could hold another meeting, but it sounds like a lot of voices got a lot of information. I don't know. We can go back and play this video, but from what I'm hearing, it seems like the interested parties got a lot of questions answered. I think as staff, we'll maybe make a determination. Do we need to hold it? We did have the council member or the mayor's representative asked to have a meeting where we actually talk to more people. And if that's a question coming from the mayor's office, I'm inclined to talk to more people. So we might need to hold another meeting, which we could hold in approximately, well, whatever, a month, whatever the notice takes to have a larger conversation. But again, I think this has been a robust conversation. We do have one hand up from a concerned guest, and we haven't heard from them. Sir or ma'am, would you like to speak?
Yes. I just wanted to say that I appreciate your office and your staff for giving us this time to explore this opportunity. I just want everyone to know that I grew up here, and I'm almost 50. So I have a dog in this fight. And I'm still, one question that was kind of repeated in the chat and that was voiced but not answered is, why was the original application expanded? Because I understand that Muhammad, and I don't want to mispronounce anybody's name, but the original application did not include the Rosedale on the other side of Emancipation, but it's included in the map now. And there's not a lot of support on our block. I've spoken to my neighbor, and we have all spoken about this, and there's not a lot of support. I need that to be understood, not on this block. And so we want to understand why the original application was expanded to our block, because we were not informed before with the same amount of consideration that Asif took to talk to his neighbors on that side of Emancipation. Thank you.
So I'll take that, Roman. I think we've answered the question a couple times, but obviously not well enough for you. So let's try it. When Asif first came into our office, he had a smaller area that he was thinking about, but he had more than enough property owners to exceed the 10% for the area that he was looking at. And as we do with every application, we look at it and check property owner records and that type of thing, and speak with the applicant about, let's talk about the area, and is this what you want to do? And because he had significantly more property owner support, we suggested that he might want to rethink the boundaries. He did, and he came back with this. And so many people have said original application, but the truth of the matter is, when he came in to talk with us the first time, it wasn't an application. So the petition, there has only been one petition submitted, and it is for these boundaries. And so we have multiple conversations with applicants prior to actually submitting the petition. So this petition was submitted with these boundaries. I'm sorry that he didn't speak to your side of Emancipation as much as he spoke to his side of Emancipation. That's what this process is all about. Once we receive a petition, we start speaking with property owners. We hold meetings, any number of meetings, to answer questions and to make sure that you are fully aware of what your vote means. When you get your response form and you are asked to say, yes, I support this, or no, I do not support this, we want to make sure that you are fully informed of what that vote means and the ramifications of it. And so that's what these meetings are about. This is the very beginning of a process that might be a number of more months while we're talking to you and to everybody else in the neighborhood. I think I heard that at least what we ought to be doing is having another meeting with the Civic Club, which is a larger area. And I think we'll schedule that as quickly as we can.
Director Brown, this is Asif. Because my name was invoked a couple of times, I feel compelled to add a little bit of color to the history of this application. With the intent of establishing the very first historic district in Riverside Terrace, it's like when you want to take your first step on a journey, you don't want to trip and fall, which is what earlier I had mentioned about things that were too big and failed, including deed restriction efforts that Jack May alluded to. So I had put in a small, doable, where we had enough property owners interested in, and we believe that we have the votes to do that. So there was a district boundary that I had proposed, but frankly, an expanded boundary was presented back to me, not by my choice, but by somebody else's choice. I expressed trepidation for the very same reasons that we are encountering now. And that is the bigger we make the boundary, the less chance for success, because that many more agendas are going to come to the table. There are a lot of agendas at play here in Third Ward, as it is in Riverside Terrace, as well as it is gentrifying. I have front row seats to all of that because I live here, and I have a lot invested in this. My adult daughter has a house on Wichita. My adult son has a house on Arbor. I live on Rosedale. So I was comfortable with a boundary, and we may find that if we can go ahead and have as many meetings as we want to, and we can expand the boundaries, but that is a recipe for failure. That is my prediction. We can certainly satisfy people's needs to have more meetings, but it's not going to result in a bigger historic district. In fact, it is going to result in failure. So I suggest that to have initial success, perhaps we need to just simply revisit the boundaries as they have been proposed today. That's my opinion.
Thank you for verifying that you did not originally submit the block of Rosedale on the opposite side of Emancipation. And I hear a lot about expanding the boundary. I would appreciate, as well as I'm sure many of my neighbors would appreciate, decreasing the boundary from what it currently is to what maybe you originally proposed, so that you could find success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Shavers. I see the last hand up here is Ms. Lopez, and I've got to ask Ms. Lopez, do you live in the neighborhood in the proposed district?
Yes, I do live here. I own a lot on Rosedale.
Oh, okay. I see.
I am one of the owner on the Rosedale. What I'm asking the owner, do your research.
She does not live here. She just owns that vacant lot.
I own a lot there, so
everybody
I have an interest in the lot.
Please. Let's just let Ms. Lopez speak. Thank you.
I do have an interest over there. I live across a Civic. As you see, the city of Houston changing face, even West U and downtown, everywhere changing face. If you feel like your home beautiful, you want to keep it the way it is, keep it. But do not play any restriction to your land. It is a disaster. It's a disaster. With ordinance imposed on permits, and 200-300 years from now, the house is not going to be the same. Everything changed. Like Astro, look at the Astro world. Once was wonder of the world. Today is a liability. So you do not place restriction on your land, because we don't grow land. God giving us so much land, and you do not want any restriction to your land. You may love your land right now because you live in it, but 2-3 generations down the road, you won't live there. You never know what architecture like. Why are we have high rise, big high rise in Dubai, you know, instead of desert, you know? Why we have building 200-300 towers? The world changing constantly. So you do not want to leave the legacy whereby your children cannot do anything with it. You do not want that because we don't grow land. Simple as that. Okay. It's ridiculous to have this restriction on it either. You don't want any restriction. Why is the downtown allow split lots? Because there are more populations. We have to accommodate the new generation, you know? So you don't want any restriction to your land. The Riverside over there already have this restriction that you can only build certain thing, you know? And it's already devaluing your lot in many ways, because I public my land to sell. And the owner don't want to live there because they have to deal with the neighbor like Mr. Asif. They say it straight out.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Because of your neighbor.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Look, it's 7:49. I think we've allowed a very good amount of comments. I don't want to cut us off, but we probably lost a lot of the original attendees. I want to thank everybody.
I'd like to say one thing I haven't spoken today.
Is that Mr. Go ahead, sir. You said you haven't spoke. Go ahead.
This is Mr. Kevin Wright, and I'm the boss landlord of Third Ward. I've been for 20 years. My family's been in this business 80 years, and I've talked to almost about 30 people, most of which have said that they are not in support of this historic district. Asif, you slipped in a lot of Airbnbs in the area. I don't understand your fence on the corner there, your 20-foot vegetation wall, or your tree house in the front. You do all of this stuff, and then you're trying to restrict landlords. These kind of restrictions, as I told the Houstonian magazine, which some of that stuff they wrote was a misquote, but the gist of it is some of these restrictions hurt the middle class, poor Black people, other minorities, and white people. These people need a place to lease. Third Ward has always been a diverse array of Blacks, Jews first. Black people didn't build most of those houses over there. The Jews built them. My great grandfather was one of the first Black developers of the Sunnyside over there off of Alvin Street. You know, we lost 3 houses in the 80s when I was a baby because of taxes not being able to be kept up with. We're paying high taxes. The emancipation pool, the chlorination system is broken. I know Ms. Shabazz is handling a lot of that, but there's a lot of things going on. They need speed bumps. These restrictions against what Ms. Lynn is trying to say, restrictions on things like whatever your neighbor wants to put reasonably, if they want to put a nice modern home, if they want to have a old looking, you know, Beverly Hillbilly style home, that's cool. If they want to do a landmark like River Oak style, that's cool. But y'all stop this because it's hurting people, and people don't want anybody. I see you're buying a lot of property these houses. You know, we didn't have any. We had a couple of, you know, bad ideas together, but I wish you the best in your business.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And just for the record, do you own and live in the neighborhood in the proposed district?
No, he does not.
May not have heard that question. So I want to say, look, it's almost 8 o'clock. Thank you for everybody for being involved. This has been a very informative session. Let me just put up a screen here. And if you can see this screen, this has got my name and phone number here in the office, as well as Jason Lilienthal and Terrence Jackson, all 3 of whom were on the call. All of us were on the call earlier. So we all have the same first 3 digits, 832, and the same next 3 digits, 393. And then mine is 6557, Jason 6550, and Mr. Jackson is 6541. So if you have questions or concerns and you want to give us a call, we're certainly happy to to work with you. We work for you. We're here as public servants and bring our professional talent to the table. So I want to say thank you very much. With that, I would say we're going to step back, talk, and figure out where we're going to go next, and we'll let you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all, Director Wallace Brown.
Thank
and,
you.
and the whole
Thank you.
team. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, and thank you, citizens and constituents of the area, voicing your concerns. Thank you.